Colorado Territory, 1870. The dust-laden winds that swept across the plains carried whispers of a place where fortunes were made and souls were lost. In a small settlement nestled between mountain and prairie, the promise of gold had faded, leaving behind those too stubborn or too broken to leave. Among them was Olivia Newell, age 18, with hair the color of summer wheat and eyes that reflected the vast Colorado sky. Her father had died 3 months prior, leaving nothing but debts and an unmarked grave. Her mother had succumbed to typhoid 2 years before that. Now, dressed in her only decent dress, faded blue calico with white trim, Olivia stood on the wooden platform of the general store, her thin shoulders squared despite the weight pressing down on them. $500 for the girl, announced Mr. Perkins, the debt collector who had seized what remained of the Newell homestead. Young, healthy, and knows her letters. A fine wife for any man wanting to settle. The crowd of men shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't a slave auction, such things were prohibited since the war's end, but a marriage arrangement, where a woman with no means could be purchased to settle family debts, her consent merely a formality in the eyes of territorial law. Olivia kept her gaze fixed on the distant mountains. She had always believed the frontier offered freedom, even for women like her. But now she understood the cruel truth. The West was free only for those who could afford it. For the rest, it was just another kind of cage. "400," came a voice from the back. Olivia's stomach twisted. The voice belonged to Harold Jenkins, the saloon owner whose hands wandered too freely whenever she delivered laundry to his establishment. "450," called another man, old enough to be her grandfather, his teeth stained with tobacco. Olivia closed her eyes. She had promised herself she would not cry, would not show weakness before these men who saw her as nothing more than property to be acquired. 500. The new voice cut through the murmurs, clear, firm, and surprisingly young. The crowd parted to reveal a man perhaps 25 years of age, tall and broad-shouldered in a manner that spoke of work rather than indulgence. His face was tanned from the sun, but free of the weathered creases that marked most men of the territory. A light stubble shadowed his jaw, and his eyes, a deep green that reminded Olivia of the pine forests, regarded her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "Riley Sutton," someone whispered. "Runs that cattle spread south of here." Mr. Perkins cleared his throat. 500 from Mr. Sutton. Any other offers? Silence fell. Even Jenkins, who had been eyeing Olivia hungrily, seemed unwilling to challenge the young cattleman. "Sold, then, to Mr. Sutton for $500. Olivia felt her future lock into place with the fall of those words. She would be leaving with this stranger, this Riley Sutton, to whatever fate awaited her at his ranch. At least he wasn't old, or visibly cruel. But that was small comfort as she descended the steps, head held high despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "My wagon's this way, Miss Newell," Riley said quietly when she reached him. His voice held none of the triumph or possession she had expected. Instead, it carried something almost like apology. Olivia nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She followed him to a well-maintained wagon hitched to 2 healthy-looking horses. A rifle was secured beneath the seat, and supplies were neatly stacked in the back, the mark of a man prepared for frontier life. As they left the settlement behind, the silence between them stretched like the endless prairie around them. Olivia stared straight ahead, her hands folded in her lap, her mind cycling through the same bitter thoughts. She had been sold like cattle to a man she didn't know, to serve as a wife in name and deed on a remote ranch. Whatever dreams she had nurtured, of teaching in a proper school someday, or perhaps working in a respectable establishment in Denver, were now as dust beneath the wagon wheels. "I know this isn't what you wanted," Riley finally said, his eyes fixed on the trail ahead. "But I want you to know you'll be safe with me. I've got a good spread, good water. The house isn't much, but it's solid." "Why did you buy me, Mr. Sutton?" Olivia asked, the words sharper than she'd intended. He glanced at her, then away. "A man gets lonely out here. There are saloon girls for that kind of loneliness." A flush crept up his neck. "That's not what I meant. I meant the kind of loneliness that comes from eating every meal alone, from having no one to talk to but horses and cattle, from watching the sun rise and set with no one to share it with." He paused. "I've been saving for a wife, truth be told. Was planning to send back east for a mail-order bride come spring. Then I heard about your situation. And you thought you'd save yourself the wait, she said coldly. Riley's hands tightened on the reins. I thought I might help someone who needed it, while helping myself too. I don't expect gratitude, Miss Newell, but I do hope you'll give the arrangement a chance. Olivia turned away, blinking back tears. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. The truth was, she had nowhere else to go, no one to turn to. The West was unforgiving to women alone. At least with Riley Sutton, she had shelter, food, and apparent safety. But she made a promise to herself as the wagon rolled toward her new prison. She would never give him her heart. On the frontier, love was a luxury she couldn't afford, and trust was a weakness she couldn't indulge. The Sutton Ranch appeared as the sun began its descent, a modest but well-built cabin with a barn and corral nestled in a protected valley. A creek ran nearby, and a small garden plot showed signs of attempted cultivation. It was more than Olivia had expected, but still represented the cage her life had become. You'll have your own room, Riley said as he helped her down from the wagon. His hand was calloused but gentle. I built an addition last summer. It's not much, but it's private. Olivia merely nodded, following him inside. The cabin was surprisingly clean for a bachelor's dwelling. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and sturdy handmade furniture filled the main room. Shelves held books, actual books, and the kitchen area was organized with unexpected efficiency. Through there, Riley indicated a door. I'll bring your trunk. Her room was small but contained a real bed with a straw mattress, a chest of drawers, and even a small mirror. A window looked out toward the mountains, and someone, Riley, she presumed, had attempted to make the space welcoming with a colorful quilt and a vase of wildflowers. I'll prepare supper, he said from the doorway. You can rest or get settled. He hesitated. I know this isn't ideal, Miss Newell, but I promise you'll come to no harm here. When he was gone, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed her tears to fall. She wept silently for the life she had lost, for her parents, for the future that had been sold away for $500. When her tears were spent, she washed her face in the basin provided, straightened her dress, and stepped back into the main room. If she was to survive this new life, she would need to understand her captor, for despite his gentle words, that's what Riley Sutton was. A man who had purchased her freedom, however benevolent his intentions claimed to be. The weeks that followed established a routine of careful distance. Riley worked from dawn till dusk with his cattle and horses, while Olivia managed the household affairs. They spoke little beyond necessities, taking meals together in awkward silence. True to his word, Riley never entered her room, never made demands of her body. He treated her with a distant respect that should have been comforting but somehow made her more uneasy. What was he waiting for? When would the mask slip to reveal the true nature beneath? One evening, as summer heat gave way to autumn's first chill, Olivia found Riley sitting on the porch, a letter in his hand. Bad news? She asked, surprising herself with the question. Riley looked up, equally surprised at her initiation of conversation. My brother. He's sick down in New Mexico territory. Consumption, the doctor thinks. I'm sorry, Olivia said, and found she meant it. Robert's all the family I have left, Riley said quietly. Our parents died crossing the plains when I was 14. He was just 10. Olivia hesitated, then sat on the far end of the porch. My mother died of typhoid. Father never really recovered, drank himself to death while trying to work a claim that never paid out. Riley nodded, understanding in his eyes. The West takes more than it gives, sometimes. Is that why you're here? She asked, hoping it will give more than it takes. A faint smile touched his lips. I came because I wanted something that was mine. Something I built with my own hands, where I answered to no one but myself and God. He looked across his modest ranch. I thought once I had this, I'd feel complete. But a man needs more than land and cattle to make a home. So you bought a wife, Olivia said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. Riley's face fell. I bought your debt, Miss Newell. Not you. I never expected. He stood suddenly. I should check on the new calf. He left her sitting there, confusion replacing some of her anger. If he didn't consider her his property, what exactly did he want from her? The answer came 3 days later when a band of riders approached the ranch, rough-looking men whose appearance sent Riley reaching for his rifle. Stay inside, he told Olivia, his voice tight. If anything happens, There's a pistol in the drawer by my bed. Take it and run for the Miller place 2 miles east." Before she could respond, he was outside, rifle held casually but ready. From her position by the window, Olivia could see the exchange. The leader, a scar-faced man with a cruel mouth, seemed to be demanding something. Riley's posture remained relaxed but vigilant as he responded, gesturing occasionally toward the cattle in the distance. The conversation grew heated. The leader's hand moved toward his gun, and in that instant, Olivia saw Riley for who he truly was. His movement was lightning fast, rifle raised, and aimed before the other man could clear leather. "I wouldn't," she heard him say, his voice carrying on the still air. "Now, as I said, my cattle aren't for sale, especially not at those prices. And I know stolen stock when I see it. The brands on those horses you're riding have been altered." The standoff lasted several tense moments before the leader spat on the ground and signaled his men to withdraw. Only when they were distant specks on the horizon did Riley lower his rifle and return inside. "Rustlers?" Olivia asked. Riley nodded, his face grim. "They've been hitting ranches north of here, stealing cattle and selling them south, stealing southern stock and selling it north. They wanted to use my land as a holding place, offered to cut me in." "You could have been killed," she said, surprised by the fear that had gripped her watching the confrontation. "A man has to stand for something," Riley replied, placing his rifle back on its pegs. "Otherwise, what's the point of all this?" He gestured around them. That night, Olivia lay awake, reassessing everything she thought she knew about Riley Sutton. He wasn't the captor she had imagined, nor was he simply a lonely man seeking a convenient wife. There was an integrity to him that she hadn't expected, a core of principle that seemed rare in a territory where survival often trumped morality. The next morning, she rose early and prepared a proper breakfast, not the basic fare they usually shared, but biscuits, bacon, and eggs with coffee. Riley's surprise was evident when he came in from the morning chores. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion," Olivia said. "Just thought we could use a decent meal." They ate in what felt, for the first time, like companionable silence. After breakfast, Riley hesitated by the door. "I need to ride the north pasture today. Would you like to come along? Might be good for you to know the boundaries of the property." Olivia considered declining, but found herself nodding instead. "I'll get my shawl." The day was crisp and clear, the kind of autumn beauty that made the hardships of frontier life seem worthwhile. Riley helped her mount one of his gentler horses, and they rode side by side across land that stretched toward distant mountains. "That ridge there marks the northern boundary," he explained, pointing. "Creek forms the eastern edge, and those cottonwoods to the west. Not the biggest spread, but good water and grass. Room to grow." "It's beautiful," Olivia admitted. "And it was wild and untamed, yet somehow welcoming." "I thought so the first time I saw it," Riley said, a smile softening his features. 5 years I've been working this land. Started with just 10 head of cattle and a dream. And now I've got 80 head, good breeding stock, 6 horses, and—" He trailed off, glancing at her. "And hopes for more." The unspoken meaning hung between them as they continued their ride. Riley showed her a hidden valley where wildflowers bloomed in spring, pointed out deer trails and the best fishing spots along the creek. He spoke of his plans for expansion, for adding sheep perhaps, for planting more crops next season. "You've thought of everything," Olivia observed as they rested the horses by the creek. "Not everything," Riley said quietly. "I never thought about sharing it with someone. Not really. I said I wanted a wife, but I didn't consider what it would mean to truly build a life with another person." He met her eyes directly. "I'm sorry for how this began, Olivia. If I could do it over—" "You can't," she interrupted. "None of us can change the past. We can only decide what to do with the present." Riley nodded slowly. "And what have you decided?" Olivia looked across the land that Riley had claimed and cultivated through sheer determination. "I've decided to stop seeing this place as my prison. Beyond that," she shrugged. "Time will tell." It was a small concession, but the smile it brought to Riley's face made something shift inside her. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider that perhaps her fate wasn't as bleak as she had feared. As autumn deepened toward winter, the dynamics between them continued to evolve. Riley began teaching Olivia about ranch operations, not as a master instructing a servant, but as a partner sharing knowledge. She, in turn, expanded the garden, and took over the accounts, discovering that Riley, for all his practical capabilities, struggled with numbers. They began to talk in the evenings, really talk. Riley told her of his childhood in Missouri, of the dangerous journey west that claimed his parents, of years working other men's ranches until he could afford his own. Olivia shared stories of her mother's gentle wisdom, her father's dreams that never materialized, her own hopes for education that circumstances had denied. "You could still be a teacher," Riley said one night as they sat before the fire. "There's talk of building a proper school in town next year. They'll need someone who knows their letters." Olivia looked at him in surprise. "You would let me work away from the ranch?" Riley's brow furrowed. "Let you?" "Olivia, I don't own you. I never have. If teaching is what you want, I wouldn't stand in your way." He poked at the fire. "Though I admit I'd miss your company during the day." The admission, so simply stated, warmed her more than the flames. "I would miss yours too," she found herself saying. Their eyes met across the hearth, and something unspoken passed between them, fragile as a butterfly's wing, but just as real. The moment was broken by a pounding at the door. Riley's hand moved instinctively toward his gun as he rose to answer it. A man stood there, haggard and desperate. "Sutton? Name's Dawson. My wagon broke an axle 2 miles back. My wife's having her baby. Need help." Riley didn't hesitate. "Olivia, fetch blankets and water. I'll hitch the wagon." Within minutes they were racing through the darkness, following Dawson to where he had left his wife. They found her moaning in pain in the broken wagon, her face pale in the lantern light. "The baby's coming fast," she gasped when Olivia climbed in beside her. "I helped deliver my neighbor's child back home," Olivia assured her, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. "Everything will be fine." While the men worked to transfer the Dawsons' belongings to Riley's wagon, Olivia stayed with the laboring woman. The birth was difficult, but mercifully quick. Just as the first light of dawn broke over the eastern hills, a baby's cry pierced the air. "A daughter," Olivia announced, wrapping the infant in clean blankets before placing her in the exhausted mother's arms. "We'll have them back to our place within the hour," Riley told the overwhelmed father. "They can stay until we can fix your wagon or arrange other transport." The Dawsons stayed for a week while their wagon was repaired, and Mrs. Dawson regained her strength. Watching Riley with the family, gentle with Mrs. Dawson, patient with their older children, even awkwardly holding the newborn when offered, revealed yet another dimension to the man Olivia was coming to know. "They've named her Olivia," Riley told her after the family finally departed, continuing their journey to Oregon. "After the angel who delivered her," Dawson said. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "Hardly an angel. Just doing what needed to be done. That's what makes this country work," Riley said, his gaze warm as it rested on her. "People doing what needs to be done for each other. Building something together." The first snow came early that year, blanketing the valley in white silence. Olivia woke to find Riley already gone from the cabin, tracks in the snow leading to the barn. Concerned, she dressed quickly and followed. She found him tending to a sick calf, his breath fogging in the cold air as he coaxed the animal to drink from a bottle. "His mother died in the night," Riley explained without looking up. "Found him trying to nurse from her frozen body this morning." Olivia knelt beside him, stroking the calf's head. "Will he survive? If he takes this milk, maybe. He's the last of my original stock's bloodline, important to the ranch's future." They worked together throughout the day, taking turns feeding the orphaned calf. By evening, the animal seemed stronger, rising shakily to its feet when Riley approached. "He's a fighter," Olivia said as they finally returned to the warmth of the cabin. "Like someone else I know," Riley replied, his eyes finding hers across the room. That night, as wind howled outside and snow piled against the windows, something changed between them. Perhaps it was the shared purpose of saving the calf, or the enforced intimacy of the weather that kept them close to the fire and each other. Whatever the cause, when Riley's hand tentatively covered hers on the table, Olivia didn't pull away. "I never expected to feel this way," he said softly. "When I paid your father's debt, I thought I was buying companionship, maybe someday affection. I never thought I'd." "You never thought you'd what?" Olivia prompted when he fell silent. "I never thought I'd fall in love with you," Riley finished, his voice barely audible above the crackling fire. The words hung in the air between them. Olivia's first instinct was to retreat behind the walls she had built, to remind herself that she had been sold to this man, that any feelings that developed could never be truly free of that original transaction. But as she looked at Riley's face, open and vulnerable in the firelight, she recognized the truth she had been avoiding. Her heart had betrayed her most fundamental belief. Despite everything, she had fallen in love with him too. "I promised myself I wouldn't," she whispered. "That I couldn't. I know." Riley's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "You have every right to hate the circumstances that brought you here, to hate me for my part in them." "I don't hate you, Riley." The admission felt like stepping off a cliff into unknown waters. "I've tried. It would be easier if I did." A cautious hope brightened his eyes. "What are you saying, Olivia?" She took a deep breath. "I'm saying that against all reason, against everything I believed about myself and this life, I've come to care for you. Deeply." Riley raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I don't deserve it, but I promise I'll spend every day trying to." That night, Olivia moved from her separate room to Riley's bed, not as property fulfilling an obligation, but as a woman choosing to join her life with the man she loved. Their coming together was tender, respectful, and filled with a passion neither had anticipated when their arrangement began. As winter deepened, so did their bond. They worked side by side during the day and held each other close at night. Riley began speaking of the future with increasing confidence. Expansions to the house, improvements to the ranch, children someday perhaps. Olivia allowed herself to believe in that future, to plan for it, to yearn for it. The ranch was no longer her prison but her home, a place she was helping to build with the man who had captured her heart. But the frontier was never kind enough to leave happiness unchallenged. The threat came in February, when a blizzard had just released its grip on the land. Riley rode out to check on the cattle, expecting to be gone only a few hours. When dusk fell with no sign of him, Olivia's worry turned to fear. She was about to saddle a horse to search for him when hoofbeats approached. Relief flooded her until she realized there were multiple riders, and Riley would have been alone. The door crashed open before she could reach Riley's rifle. 3 men burst in, snow crusting their coats and hatred in their eyes. She recognized the leader immediately, the rustler Riley had confronted months ago. "Where's Sutton?" he demanded, grabbing Olivia's arm. "I don't know," she answered truthfully, her mind racing. "He went to check the herd hours ago." The man shoved her into a chair. "Convenient. Guess we'll wait for him, then." "Been looking forward to settling accounts ever since he reported us to the marshal in Silver Creek. Cost us 2 good men, hanging from the same rope." "If you've heard him," Olivia began. The rustler laughed. "Haven't seen him, but when he walks through that door, he's a dead man. And then, Missy, you and I are going to get better acquainted." Olivia fought to keep her expression neutral even as terror and rage coursed through her. These men would kill Riley, and then she couldn't bear to think of what would follow. Somehow, she had to warn him or find a way to defend herself. Her opportunity came when one of the men discovered Riley's whiskey, and they began passing the bottle. As their attention wavered, Olivia edged toward the kitchen, her hand closing around a knife partially hidden by a dishcloth. A sound outside froze them all, the distinctive creak of the barn door. The rustlers exchanged glances. "That'll be him," the leader said with a cruel smile. "Jackson, go around back. Miller, take the front. I'll stay with the lady." He pressed his gun against Olivia's temple. "One sound from you, and I'll decorate the walls with what's inside your pretty head." As his men slipped out, the leader's attention was momentarily diverted. Olivia drove the knife backwards with all her strength, feeling it sink into flesh. The man bellowed in pain, his gun discharging into the ceiling as he staggered back. Olivia ran for the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. She yanked open the drawer where Riley kept his pistol, her hands shaking as she checked that it was loaded. The rustler was coming, his boots heavy on the floorboards, his curses filling the air. The bedroom door splintered under his weight. Olivia raised the gun and fired. The shot went wild, embedding itself in the doorframe. The rustler lunged forward despite the bleeding wound in his side where her knife had struck. His hands closed around her throat as they fell backwards onto the bed. "You'll pay for that," he snarled, his fingers tightening. Olivia's vision began to darken as she struggled beneath his weight. The gun had fallen from her grasp, just out of reach. Her fingers scrabbled desperately, touching cold metal just as consciousness began to fade. 2 gunshots shattered the night. One from the pistol Olivia had finally grasped and fired blindly upward, the other from the doorway where Riley stood, his face a mask of cold fury as he lowered his rifle. The rustler collapsed, his body suddenly heavy and lifeless atop her. Riley was there in an instant, pulling the dead man away, gathering Olivia into his arms. "Are you hurt?" "Did he?" Riley couldn't finish the question, his voice breaking as his hands gently examined her bruised throat. "I'm alive," Olivia managed to say. "The others, taken care of," Riley assured her, his arms tightening around her. "I saw strange horses in the corral and circled around. Caught one by the barn, the other trying to come in the back door." His voice hardened. "They won't threaten anyone again." Olivia buried her face against his chest, the reality of how close they had come to losing everything washing over her. "I thought I would never see you again," she whispered. "I thought they would kill you when you walked in that door. It would take more than rustlers to keep me from coming home to you," Riley said, pressing a kiss to her hair. "You're my heart, Olivia Sutton. Without you, none of this means anything." It was the first time he had called her by his name, and the rightness of it resonated through her like a bell's clear tone. Whatever papers they might sign later, whatever ceremony they might have in town, in that moment they truly became husband and wife, bonded not by transaction, but by a love forged in frontier hardship and tempered by shared danger. Spring came early that year, the snow retreating to reveal green shoots pushing through the softening earth. Olivia stood on the porch, watching as Riley worked with the horses in the corral, the orphaned calf, now a growing bull, grazing nearby. Her hand rested on her stomach, where the first subtle swelling had begun to show. She hadn't told Riley yet, wanting to be certain before sharing news that would change their lives forever. But as she felt the gentle quickening within, she knew the time had come. Riley looked up, as if sensing her gaze, and waved. Even after months together, the sight of him still caused her heart to skip. He finished his task and walked toward her, removing his hat as he climbed the porch steps. "Something on your mind?" he asked, noticing her expression. "You've been quiet all morning." Olivia took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "We're going to need that expansion to the house sooner than we thought." Confusion crossed Riley's face, then dawning realization, followed by wonder. "Are you saying?" Olivia nodded, tears of joy filling her eyes. "By harvest time, there will be 3 of us on this ranch." Riley let out a whoop that startled the horses, then lifted Olivia into his arms, spinning her around before setting her gently back on her feet. "A child," he said in awe. "Our child. The first of many, I hope," Olivia said, leaning into his embrace. "This land deserves a family to love it for generations to come." Riley looked out over the property they had nurtured together, the expanded garden now rich with early vegetables, the strengthened corrals, the new addition to the barn, and the foundation already laid for the house expansion. "When I bought this land, I thought I was building something just for myself," he said. "A place where I answered to no one. Now I realize I was preparing it for us all along. For you, for our children, for the future." Olivia thought of the frightened, bitter young woman who had arrived at this ranch less than a year ago, sold to pay her father's debts, certain that love was a luxury the frontier denied. How wrong she had been. The West might be harsh and unforgiving, but it was also a place where true partnerships were forged, where love could grow from the most unlikely beginnings. "I never expected to find happiness here," she admitted, lacing her fingers with his. "I never expected to find you. And I never expected that paying a debt would bring me more riches than all the gold in Colorado," Riley replied, his eyes filled with a love so profound it took her breath away. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting the valley in golden light, Olivia Sutton stood beside the man who had purchased her freedom only to give it back to her, along with his heart. Together, they had transformed a simple ranch into a true home, and a business arrangement into a love story that would be told in the territory for generations to come. No one who had witnessed her standing on that auction platform could have predicted this ending. Not the debt collector, not the townspeople, not even Riley or Olivia themselves. But on the frontier, where life balanced constantly between heartbreak and hope, they had discovered the most valuable truth of all: love, freely given and honestly earned, was the greatest treasure the West had to offer.